The country of Bolivia is today among the poorest in South America. But among the very poorest in this poor country are the Ayore Indians. The Ayore are despised, vulnerable, and relatively unknown even in their own country. But God knows every tribe and nation, and God knows and loves the Ayore. On a gloomy, rainy night, in the squalor of the Indian slum on the outskirts of Santa Cruz where he lived, Beniel, an Ayore chief's son, called out to God on behalf of his young cousin, who, writhing in agony, was struggling in labor for the third day. Her body was racked with pain and fever, and death seemed to hover close in the shadows.
When Beniel, in desperation, finally called out to God, God answered. Miles away in a quiet barrio of Santa Cruz, Bolivia, husband and wife missionary doctors Placido and Tony Mercado arrived home after a strenuous day of travel. Tony felt urgently impressed to go once again to the Ayore slum encampment. Though Placido thought going out on such a night was a little crazy, he respected his wife's strong conviction and went with her. When they arrived so unexpectedly at the slum entrance, Beniel, using earthy terms that would make a sailor blush, praised God in heaven for answering his prayer. The Mercados took the young woman to the hospital. The baby was stillborn, but the mother's life was spared, and Beniel came to believe in Jesus Christ. This Jesus of whom the Mercados had so often told him. Beniel found that Jesus is the true God who answers prayer.
A radical change occurred in Beniel. He stopped his destructive drinking and drug habits immediately. A hunger to know more about this prayer-answering God took him to the AMI Bible Training Center in Brazil. As he learned about the greatness of God through Bible study, his language cleaned up, his selfish arrogance faded, and a concern for his people grew. As he approached graduation, Beniel's heart was heavy for his people. Drug abuse, prostitution, and begging were normal life for the Ayore living on the outskirts of Santa Cruz. After returning home, he began sharing the hope and strength he had received from God, who had pulled his life out of a horrible pit. Beniel knows now that only God has the power to rescue the Ayore people. The Ayore were originally a nomadic group roaming the bush in eastern Bolivia and northern Paraguay. They were notorious for their kill-or-be-killed relationship with ranchers, settlers, or anyone who dared invade their ancestral territory. In the words of Bill Pencil, one of Sam's first missionaries to the Ayore,
like Ishmael in the Bible, their hand was against every man, and every man's hand was against them.
In the 1930s, Sam missionary George Haight made a brief peaceful contact, but was unable to establish continuous mission work. Aware of the inevitable encroachment of outsiders into Ayore territory, the missions knew that it was only a matter of time before bullets, disease, or slavery would wipe out their tribe. Finally, in the early 1950s, God opened the door. South American Mission worked with the Ayore for a number of years and established small fledgling churches in 2 villages.
However, it was difficult to maintain consistent work with the Ayore given the great needs across Bolivia. Then, in 1995, God called Doctors Placido and Tony Mercado to reach out once again to the Ayore. John Depew, a soon-to-retire Sam missionary, invited the Mercados to visit Poza Verde, one of the main Ayore villages. Placido, though a Bolivian himself, was shocked by the living conditions of the people. His feelings intensified after visiting Barrio Bolivar, an Ayore camp on the outskirts of the city of Santa Cruz. The camp lacked decent housing, water, and even basic sanitation. The air was heavy with the sickening smell of cocaine paste being smoked by young people lounging on the muddy ground. Young women with empty eyes stared at him and then turned away to offer themselves to a passing trucker. Unwanted children were abandoned or left in the inadequate care of grandmothers completely unprepared for rearing children under such conditions. And sadly, with no trained Indian leadership, the Ayore Church was dead.
As a result of those first visits, the Mercados changed the focus of their lives. They decided to dedicate themselves to helping the IRA. Because they were doctors, the Mercados clearly saw the IRA's need for physical as well as spiritual help. In 1995, even though they were both still in medical school, they began regular medical and evangelistic visits to Poza Verde and Barrio Bolivar. In 1997, South America Mission invited the Mercados to join the mission. Later that same year, God brought a spiritual reawakening in the IRA camps where they were working. The IRA began coming back to their village churches. Today, the Mercados have expanded their work to include many IRA camps and reservations, concentrating on villages where no other missions work. To join the Mercados, God has raised up a group of Bolivian and American Christian doctors, nurses, and medical students who have a heart for the poor and for those not yet touched by God's redeeming love.
The heart of this ministry is a passion to see Jesus transform lives among the IRA, just as he did for Beniel. Although God has called a number of missionaries to work with the IRA, the future of the IRA Church depends on developing strong and effective IRA church leaders. To that end, the IRA ministry consistently invests time and money in training IRA leaders. A number of IRA families have been sent to AMI, South America Mission's Indian Bible Training Center, just over the border in Brazil. AMI trains Indian people in the Bible so they can return as witnesses to their own people. A core value at AMI is discipleship, and we've seen wonderful spiritual growth in those sent so far. Beniel and his wife Leoncia, the first couple to go and graduate, live in Poza Verde and are leading the church there. They also participate in evangelistic trips to other villages where there are believers but no trained leaders. Beniel is obviously loved and appreciated by his people, who are very aware of the tremendous change in him since Jesus saved him. The heartbreak of the IRA's situation naturally led to a holistic ministry. We believe that James 2:16 speaks to us when he says that if we see someone in need and do nothing about it, our faith is dead. It is difficult to convince people of God's love when they see that our needs and wants are provided for, but we don't help them to get life's basic necessities. Thus, healthcare and education, so the IRA can function in Bolivian society, and community development, so the IRA can earn an honest income, must go hand in hand with evangelism, church planning, and leadership training. We seek to address all of these needs as agents of Christ's love.